The WNBA draft ratings are officially in, and boy, oh boy, do we have some things to talk about.
You know who we're referring to, Geno Auriemma, the UConn, when we discuss the elephant in the locker room. Legend, the master of passive-aggressive interviews and seemingly the unofficial president of the anybody but Caitlin Clark's crown jewel, Paige Bueckers recently had her WNBA draft moment. However, rather than the media frenzy we saw when Caitlin Clark went first overall last year, what we got this time was a silent reception, and let's not sugarcoat this, a big old reality check. When Caitlin Clark announced for the draft last year, a staggering 2.6 million people showed up, which is double the number of viewers and double the buzz.
For the last few months, the mainstream media, they have tried to convince us that Paige Bueckers is a draw. Me personally, I think she's a star, but I'm not exactly convinced that she is a draw.
If you think this is just a coincidence, you haven't been paying attention. The media has been doing everything in their power to make Bueckers the next face of women's basketball. They have been airing highlight reels, feature interviews, and even inserting that famous Geno Auriemma smirk in post-game pressers to keep the story going. But the truth is that no amount of Connecticut mystique or coach speak can hide the fact that Clark is the clear winner. This isn't about Paige lacking talent, she's got game. Nobody's disputing that.
You'll find a lot of stars, but there's only a handful of draws. There's only a handful of people over the past 40 or 50 years who have the impact, the drawing power to elevate the product into the mainstream.
But star power, that magnetic pull that packs arenas and hijacks sports talk radio, that's Caitlin Clark's domain. And what we just witnessed with these draft numbers is the basketball audience voting with their eyeballs. And they weren't interested in the Genelette hype machine. Let's be honest, Geno Auriemma's got a legacy. The man's won more championships than most franchises, but somewhere along the line his critiques stopped sounding like expert analysis and started sounding a lot more like jealous uncle energy. You know, the type that shows up at Thanksgiving dinner with passive-aggressive jabs like, "That's nice." But back in my day,
whether or not Paige Bueckers is a star or a draw, that remains to be seen. Judging by the ratings for the Dump Diver draft the other night, Paige Bueckers is not a mainstream draw yet. WNBA drew 1.3 million viewers the other night for the draft on ESPN. Now, that number, it can be credited 100% to Paige Bueckers because every other player involved was completely unknown.
Geno's been doing that to Caitlin Clark for 2 seasons now. He's been downplaying her numbers, minimizing her impact, and constantly reminding everyone that her fans are delusional.
Although 1.3 million is a great number for the WNBA, it is significantly below what Caitlin Clark drew last year. Matter of fact, it's 50% lower than what Caitlin Clark drew last year.
Meanwhile, his star pupil just got overshadowed by someone who, spoiler alert, didn't need to wear a UConn jersey to become a national icon. The UConn PR machine may still be running, but the wheels are starting to come off. During the draft broadcast, the vibe was off, interviews fell flat, names were mispronounced, and energy was low. It was like everyone in the room knew they were standing in the shadow of last year's main event. Even longtime broadcaster Tim Wilson didn't hold back, saying off-air that the difference between this year's draft and the last one was night and day, and he's right.
A great college player like Caitlin was, the delusional fan base that follows her disrespected the WNBA players by saying she's going to go in that league and tear it apart. There were actually odds on she's 3rd or 4th in betting odds on being MVP of the WNBA. These people are so disrespectful and so unknowledgeable and so stupid that it gives women's basketball a bad name. Okay, so the kid was set up for failure right from the beginning.
Let's zoom out to see why ratings are so important in professional sports, as they are more than simply statistics. They are dollar signs that dictate ad spend. One had a great who made history, and the other had a star the league is attempting to create. Sponsor agreements, TV contracts, and everything else aside, a 49% decline in viewership is a marketing catastrophe, not a statistic to ignore.
I'm here with Anissa and Rakia. And we are holding it down right now. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. My bad.
It's okay.
Sorry. What?
Go ahead, say your name.
Cheyenne Zellers. I'm so sorry. That is embarrassing. Cheyenne, I apologize, by the way. That's so.
When someone at ESPN has a heated Zoom chat with their boss, it's a boardroom panic. This is where things get particularly unpleasant. The public didn't bite, and why should they when the original is still lighting it up every night? Additionally, social media was on fire the moment those numbers dropped, and the WNBA and ESPN spent months preparing Paige as though she would carry the torch into a new era. They attempted to replicate the Clark playbook with breathtaking coverage, feature stories, and teases of a generational moment. Without ratings, Caitlin, according to one widely shared post, they attempted to substitute a harsh yet precise floodlight for the sun. The public has made their decision and is not perplexed. Caitlin Clark isn't just involved in women's basketball. She is the sport at the moment, and that's precisely what's making people like Geno Auriemma crazy.
2025 second most viewed WNBA draft of all time with an average of 1.25 million viewers with a peak of 1.46 million viewers, up 119% versus 2023. And I know what the question may be, 2022, 2020. Well, Ben, just out of curiosity, because we're all curious around here, right? We all want to be well informed. What is it compared to the 2024?
It must hurt to have spent decades creating the most recognizable brand in women's college hoops only to watch an Iowan player steal the thunder. Clark did what no one else outside of UConn has done in years, making women's basketball a must-watch on television. She turned regular season games into headline news and transformed college gyms into NBA arenas, and she accomplished this without Geno's assistance. In fact, she did it in spite of the constant criticism from people like him.
It's down 49%. 49% of the audience said, yeah, I'll go watch paint dry instead. In fact, some people, Jason Whitlock, he didn't even realize the WNBA draft took place the other night. He found that out the next morning, that Paige Bueckers and the WNBA draft had actually taken place. Last year, 2.45 million, peaked with 3.09 million, up 307% from the previous high back in 2004.
The true issue is revealed by this entire story. The WNBA and its media partners continue to adhere to outdated strategies in the hopes of creating a celebrity by designating the next face of the league. However, charisma cannot be faked. Gravity cannot be faked, and Caitlin Clark possesses both in plenty. Geno can continue to hold press conferences full of patronizing remarks and subtle criticisms while he's thinking back on the good old days. Paige Bueckers may be a part of the league's future. She may win titles, receive all-star selections, and have a fantastic pro career. But according to this draft, she's not the one setting the standard because that woman wears number 22 in Indiana.
601,000 from 2004. So 2024 was up 307%. From 2004, 1.06 million women viewers was the 2024 draft. Now here we go, folks. This is when we get into the nooks, into the crannies, and into the fun.
When you place Paige Bueckers and Caitlin Clark side by side, there is an obvious question. Caitlin Clark is defining the new ones. The mainstream narrative has heavily emphasized Bueckers' championship victory, essentially framing it as the ultimate badge of greatness, but in doing so, they have diminished the attention on Clark's statistical annihilation of long-standing records. The media conveniently avoids what holds more weight, such as lifting a trophy once or completely rewriting the NCAA record books like you're the editor-in-chief.
Why was last year's draft such a big deal? Well, Caitlin Clark was getting drafted. Reason number one, Caitlin Clark getting drafted. Reason number two, why it was such a big deal. Well, Caitlin Clark was going number one overall. And the third reason why, calling a spade here, these three women, Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, Cameron Brink. Perfect storm. A perfect storm, a perfect bill of...
Bueckers brought home a national title for UConn, which is undoubtedly a huge accomplishment. That deserves praise, but let's not fool ourselves. Caitlin Clark took a sledgehammer to a record that had been set for 50 years. A half-century of scoring history vanished in a flash, thanks to one player who made logo threes look routine. That's not just impressive, that's myth-making, and this is where it gets even more bizarre. Not content to be the scoring queen, Caitlin led the country in assists several times. Let's pause to consider that she was dishing out the most dimes in college basketball and scoring more than any other player in history. It would be like if Steph Curry and Chris Paul combined to create a terrifying, record-breaking basketball robot. We're talking about a player who dominated in both creation and execution, a rare dual threat that the game hardly ever sees at this level. If you want the raw numbers, let's get them. In her final season of college, Clark averaged 31.6 points, 9 assists and 7.4 rebounds, basically a walking triple-double every night. A solid 21.9 points, 3.8 assists, and 5.2 rebounds for Bueckers' solid numbers, no question. But they don't carry the same weight as Clark's.
Didn't you tell us that in 2004 it was 601,000? My point exactly. They still haven't rebounded from the days of 2004. They still haven't managed to maintain that same audience from 2004. Until Caitlin Clark showed up. Until Caitlin Clark arrived on the scene, and then they're going to boast about a measly 1.25 million. You guys want to know what's funny about 1.25 million? 1.25 million is closer to the 601,000 in 2004 than it is to the 2.45 million in 2025. We're already closer to 2004 numbers than we were to 2025 numbers.
One was building the board and establishing the rules, while the other was playing chess. What's even more annoying is that the media seems intent on denying this disparity, shifting the focus from acknowledging Clark's slew of accomplishments to banners and trophies. It's like comparing a fireworks show to a volcano eruption. Sure, the latter is lovely, but one changes the environment, while the other only creates noise for a night. Clark's influence went well beyond the box office. She transformed routine, games into national spectacles. She didn't just fill arenas, she filled them with buzz, headlines, and anticipation. She didn't need a championship to change the sport. Instead, she did it with sheer talent and a swagger that attracted millions of fans.
1 million people disappeared. 1.2 million people, to be fair, disappeared. We can spin that as many ways as we want. The trend is already coming back down. The trend is already coming back down. Juju Watkins next year draft, 1.09 million. Oh, another 1 million view draft. But we went from 2.4 to 1.2 to now 1.09. Who's after Juju? My point exactly. We're already forecasting a 2027 draft of 650,000.
Her influence was so powerful that it sent waves into living rooms that had never watched women's college basketball before, not to mention the circumstances. All the while, Clark was the main target every night, and every team's strategy was to stop her box and one triple team.
Unlike Caitlin Clark, Paige Bueckers has been embraced with open and hairy arms into the WNBA. Players have embraced her potentially in ways that we don't even know about. More importantly, the mainstream media has embraced her. And I'm starting to wonder if this media-created rivalry that is building between Paige Bueckers and Caitlin Clark will completely overshadow Angel Reese.
Let's compare the narrative treatment when LeBron James broke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's scoring record. The sports world came to a halt. Junk defenses didn't work. Everyone knew Caitlin was getting the ball, and she still torched them. That's legendary territory.
I've seen Paige Bueckers across social media for the last 5 years, it feels like. She's an elite female college basketball player. Had some knee injuries that she's rebounded from, but she's healthy right now. So she kind of sits behind Caitlin Clark. And I think that makes her a fade for me because I think the Caitlin Clark shadow is real. I think Caitlin Clark is so dominant in changing the...
Most stars fade under that kind of pressure, but Clark thrived in it, covering from wall to wall, hour-long specials with tons of thought pieces.
And for as much as people want to say Paige Bueckers is this, Paige Bueckers is that, Paige Bueckers is this, a 500,000 drop-off, okay. A 1.2 million viewer drop-off? Yikes. That I'm not sure if that is okay.
Before the discussion shifted to, yeah, but she doesn't have a ring, Caitlin Clark made headlines for breaking the all-time NCAA scoring record, which had stood for 50 years. This type of instability that leaves you wondering what's actually happening is actually how we're assessing greatness. Becker and Clark are both exceptional players, but only one of them is continuously exposed to a long list of qualifiers and caveats. Clark's expressions on his face, Becker receives fluff pieces and red carpet accolades, while her competitive fire and very presence on the court are all analyzed and discussed. It's a concerted PR campaign masquerading as journalism, not merely a double standard.
Some of the reactions, people aren't going to let it skip that we're not comparing it to 2024, down 49%. Shout out to you, Jar Jar Binks. He had to let him know twice. Big win for the WNBA draft. Yeah, they did over 1 million. Big win. They're closer to 2006 numbers, 2004 numbers than they were to 2024 numbers. You guys got the point. Why skip 2024? Does 2024 not exist?
And then, this year comes the WNBA draft presentation. And if you were hoping for a follow-up to the spectacular Caitlin-fueled extravaganza from last year, you were sadly let down. The glitzy photos and expensive polish were gone, and in their place were uncomfortable interviews. Fans noticed that social media was ablaze with side-by-side comparisons of last year's draft and this one, where the energy was, where's the class?
Great showing. Everything is compared to BC, before clock. That's right. We have a BC and we have an AC type of era in the WNBA. Guess 2024 never happened. I wonder why all the numbers are always compared to 2023. We all know.
And the league offered no real explanation, just silence and vibes. The fashion choices felt more like a TikTok experiment than a professional league moment, and the energy level could best be described as a mid-afternoon nap.
1.25 isn't dominating. You maybe haven't been following the ratings. 1.25 is a regular Caitlin Clark game on a weekend. That's regular to us. That's nothing. That's nothing to us. It is what it is.
It didn't feel like a celebration, but rather a reset. And it felt like the league was making a statement and steering this ship in a different direction, one that seemed oddly allergic to the mainstream momentum Clark had generated. The WNBA is hedging its bets in the hopes that it can ride Paige Bueckers' narrative into a future they can more easily control. It was a calculated branding decision. It appears the league is trying to redefine what it wants to be, and may be, sacrificing the very thing that brought it to the dance.
I've also noticed that the media has been overwhelmingly positive in their coverage of Paige Bueckers. Now, this is pure speculation on my part, but this is what I think the media is doing. The spankers in the media actually believe that Caitlin Clark is popular because she's white. They think little girls idolize her because she lacks melanin. They think grown men watched women's basketball for the first time because a white girl was dominating the sport. I know for normal people it sounds ridiculous, but this is how our media thinks.
Clark didn't just increase viewership, she redefined what was possible. The bias becomes evident when you consider how differently the media treats these two stars. While Paige Bueckers is practically covered in Teflon and is praised in every headline even when her numbers don't match up, some coverage has even veered into uncomfortable territory, with Clark's race being a point of criticism while Bueckers gets a free pass.
I think the media is creating this rivalry between Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers, hoping that Paige Bueckers will become the new face of the WNBA. The media will continue demonizing Caitlin Clark while praising her rival. And they're hoping that people will instantly follow Paige Bueckers because she also lacks melanin. You see, the media is fine with Paige being the face of the WNBA because she's already proven to be a loyal comrade. They can depend on her, maybe even control her. They can't do that with Caitlin Clark, either because she is unwilling or she's realized that she does not need the media to be a mainstream draw.
Caitlin Clark is constantly scrutinized. Every facial expression, defensive rotation, and missed shot is dissected as though she were on trial. The disparity in treatment has become so obvious that supporters are calling it out loud rather than whispering about it. What we're seeing isn't a healthy rivalry between two outstanding players. Instead of highlighting each athlete's strengths and recognizing what they each bring to the court, the media-manufactured showdown is designed for drama and headlines, rather than allowing the game to speak for itself.
You guys are about to find out, no offense to the Paige fans, you're going to realize that once this season starts, it's still going to be Caitlin Clark 1 in jersey sales.
The narrative machine appears fixated on elevating one athlete over the other, and here's the real danger. The millions of fans who tuned in because of Clark are beginning to notice this imbalance. They're seeing their favorite player dismissed, her impact minimized, and they're not staying to watch her get sidelined by media games. That's a problem because those ratings drop, and to be honest, it didn't have to be this way. Clark and Bueckers are both incredible in their own right, and they could have been a dynamic 1-2 punch that elevated women's basketball to new heights. Their varied approaches to playing. If the media would just step aside and let their stories unfold naturally, we might finally get the iconic rivalry the sport deserves. One born of respect, not manipulation, and most definitely not from Geno's mouth. If you agree, comment below, like, and turn on all notifications so you never miss it. Click the video on the screen, and we'll see you in the next